So yeah, thanks for those attending on time, but I will wait another couple of minutes just to make sure everyone has a chance to join. I'm going to give it another 30 seconds and then we will kick off. Thanks for your patience. Okay, we're going to get started. Thanks everyone for joining and welcome to this short presentation about AI-powered testing with Copado. We have a few things to talk about today, and hopefully I'm not going to bore you with slides. Most of this is going to be live demonstrating of the platform capabilities. But before we get going, it's a little bit about myself. I've been in the Salesforce ecosystem for about 14 years or so. Started as a Salesforce admin at a finance company down here on the South Coast, and loved Salesforce, just kind of fell in love with it, and then wondered how everybody else was managing their org. So I went out into the big wide world of consultancy and became like a delivery consultant for an ISV based on Salesforce, and did that for about 5 years or so. But it was always trying to push things live and get those projects over the final mile. And it was always a big headache. And I thought there must be a better way. Started looking for tools, came across what is now Copado Essentials, and really enjoyed using that product. So ended up liking it so much, I joined the company. So I now work mainly as a sales engineer, so pre-sales, showing people the power of the full platform. Most of my experience is in CI/CD. I'm not actually particularly experienced as a tester, but I think, as you'll see today, Copado makes that journey to test automation so much easier, and the AI agents are a big part of that. So without further ado, I want to just mention a couple of things. If you have questions, please put them in the Q&A tab. I'm going to try and leave some time at the end of the session to go and review that. I'm not going to be able to answer questions as we go. So just put your questions in that tab and I'll try and get to them at the end. And also note, you will all be receiving a recording of this demonstration after it's completed. Sometimes it takes 24 hours, 48 hours to process that, but you will be able to watch this back. So this is what the AI can offer. So we're going to look at a few of these use cases. So helping you to author and modify tests. Perhaps you have some existing automation. Perhaps you're an experienced test engineer, but all of your existing tests are written in Selenium, and you want to be able to convert those. We can do that using AI. So we'll show you a bit of that. Copado is all about making quality part of the process, and trying to shift left as much as possible. So one of the things we want to be able to do is also increase our test coverage. The more coverage we have in our regressions, the more confident we can be about the releases we've made into our production orgs. And we can convert manual tests into automated scripts. So perhaps at the moment you're running an operation where a lot of manual UAT is being done. Perhaps every release, you've got a little team of people who are all clicking through the interface and checking that everything's working, and they have to do that again and again and again. So if we want to move to that paradigm of having a lovely automated regression test running, that's going to free up all of those people to add more value or just test the new features. So we'll be looking at that as well. So let's get over there and start the actual demo. Here I am logged into Copado's robotic testing platform. Don't worry about this script right now. We're going to get to it shortly. But a few things about Copado robotic testing. It's entirely SaaS-based. So you just purchase licenses. You don't need to maintain any infrastructure to be able to run your tests. And what you get is a test platform based on Robot Framework. Robot Framework targets text, locate text on the screen rather than technical locators that you might be used to working with in platforms like Selenium. Much more robust, so much easier to read. I mean, if you want to have a little look through this test case here, it's pretty obvious what each one of these steps is doing. And that's really very powerful because it means that you can everyone can read these test scripts and understand what they're doing. If I come across a 6-month-old Selenium test and I know that this is failing, it's going to take me a little while to figure out what that actually means. Okay, the star of the show is over here. It's the test agent, and it's basically your AI co-pilot sitting here to help you out with whatever it is that you want to ask it. So we talked about a use case where maybe we have an existing feature documentation. And first up, maybe we just want it to tell us, how would you go about testing this? What's a good level of testing that we might want to introduce? And here I'm not talking about automated testing. I'm talking about just being able to ask it to write for us some manual testing. So here's the prompt that I'm giving it. Based on the following feature documentation, write out manual test steps that would allow a human to test the full functionality and ensure it's working correctly. And then I just pasted in some text from a feature document based on some kind of automatic lead conversion. So you can see here that it's actually suggesting some manual test steps to get through each of the features and the full functionality of that feature. And so now we've actually got something. Obviously, we're going to have to review it, right? The AI is not there to replace anyone's job. It's there to help make you more efficient and use your time more wisely. So now I can take these manual steps and perhaps add them to my user story so that I can bring that testing team and that business feature together, and so that everyone's working around the same feature and everyone is able to share that information properly. Now, the next thing that we might want to do is actually run that manual test, right? And commonly what we see in a lot of customers that we talk to is that job might be given to a separate team, a small group of people, perhaps business users, perhaps part of a QA team, who are then forced to go into the system and run all those tests. And perhaps if they're finding issues, they're taking screenshots, maybe they've got an Excel sheet to manage all of this stuff. It becomes very disparate. The information is floating around. And oftentimes when they report their bugs back to the development team, the developer will say something like, well, I couldn't reproduce that in my system, so I'm not even going to accept it. You're going to have to give me better steps to reproduce. Perhaps you haven't given me enough information. And this is where we can talk about Copado Explorer, which is a feature of the Copado robotic testing platform. And what we're able to do here, oops, sorry, that's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to create a brand new exploration, but it wanted to take me straight into it. So let's just make sure. There we go. And we're going to give it some basic details. So in this case, I'm just going to call this Let's Explore. And I'm going to give it a starting URL, and I'm just going to point it at the standard sandbox login for Salesforce. It's important to note here that Copado robotic testing isn't limited to testing Salesforce at all. You can test any system with a UI, but obviously Copado's experience is all around CI/CD for Salesforce. and its related clouds. And so that's what I'm going to show you today. Now, I'm just going to get logged in here. What we're seeing is really a browser within a browser. And we also have this overlay. And you can see that it's actually recording what I'm doing. So, well, it's recording the fact that I can't log in, which is not the greatest. Let's just make sure that I'm not typing something funny. There we go. I obviously typed my password incorrectly. And notice here that it's actually recording the steps as I go through. Any sensitive information like my password isn't being recorded. And you'll see the power of this a little bit later on. Now, I'm logged into a UAT sandbox here, and I could have provided guidance as part of this exploration. So if I'm a QA manager, I can tell people what it is that I'm expecting them to test. In this case, I'm just going to go ahead and start moving around the system. So I'm going to go to the leads tab here. I'm going to find that my overlay is in the way. So I'm just going to drag it out of the way. And I'm going to start creating my new lead. This happens to be a Spanish-speaking demo org for some reason. But that doesn't matter because the recorder isn't going to be worried about that. I'm going to create a qualified lead. And I'm going to stick in some basic information. I'm going to add my company name as that's required. And perhaps I will say this is a very hot lead and I will save it. Now, it turns out, perhaps in this testing scenario, that I shouldn't be able to do that. I know that as a user, creating a qualified lead from scratch is not supposed to be allowed. There should have been some validation that found that. And so I want to make my development team aware of that. So I just hit the add finding, and I can basically go and mark up the screen now. Should not be able to create this from scratch. And I'll save that finding there. Now, I said earlier, you can do anything within these exploration tests. So maybe if I go to the Copado website, maybe I want to watch some demos, right? I'll stop the recording at this point. But the point is, everything is getting recorded. And when I end my exploration, what I get is a lovely condensed summary of everything that went on in that exploration session. So when I talked about screenshots and Excel spreadsheets floating around, this is all contained together. And if I want to go and share this video, I've got a shareable link here. I could download this and add it to a training manual, perhaps to show people how a system is supposed to be used. Maybe I've got the QA team. I want to make them aware that they need to go look at this because this is a use case that would benefit from being added to my regression suite. So I don't have to run this again on the next release. And when I do that, they're going to get a link back to here where they can actually come through and watch me step through the interface. You can see that we've got my password step here, but it's marked as secret. I can even switch to video mode. So for all of those intricate parts of a UI where maybe just what I did isn't enough, I need to know exactly where on the screen I did it. I can go watch that video of me at this point probably failing to log in, or I can skip forward to the relevant part of that video. Another really cool part of this, let me just switch back to the steps, is I can jump through quickly the explorations and get to those findings. So I can find out, I can understand exactly what the user felt was wrong about this part of the process, and I can report those findings back into Azure or Jira or directly back into my Copado org as a brand new user story. And when I do that, the definition and the exploration link that we're looking at here will be in that user story, as will all of the automation script that took us to that point. And this is key because this is the robot framework language that sits and plays nicely with Copado robotic testing. So basically, we've done a manual test, we've squeezed all of the juice out of it. Perhaps we had several explorations over the same feature. We've gathered all the bugs, we've reported them back in, we've had them fixed. We've perhaps added some videos to our training documentation. We've really squeezed the juice out of that process. And as a bonus, we can now come back in to Copado robotic testing, and we could maybe just cut and paste that text into here and start massaging it into a true regression test. So if we were to do that, and I'm not going to, I'm just going to run a different version of a test here, just so that you can see how this language works. Again, remember, no infrastructure is required. You don't need to maintain any infrastructure. We're doing all of that for you. And as we set this up, you can see that here is a test case that starts on our website. You can see the robot working through all of these steps. It's just filled out the contact form, and it can now context switch within the same test case to Salesforce and start navigating Salesforce with really simple language like launch app sales, click text leads. So anyone's going to be able to understand what this test script is doing. And there we are. We're at the end of that test case, and it passed. And we can run this as part of a regression. We can use tags to relate particular parts of our regression to particular features within our systems. And we can even run these regressions much earlier on in the pipeline, because we can actually say, oh, that user story, part of the quality check for that user story is that we must run all regressions in our end-to-end tagged suite. And we can do that in our dev box, because all of these scripts can be parameterized, and Copado is aware of where that user story currently is in your pipeline. Okay, so we've done some exploration. We've shown you that Copado robotic testing can test all kinds of things and do end-to-end testing. But let's go back to the test agent, because here we might ask something based on that test script that we've got. So we talked about widening or broadening our test code coverage. So let me just expand this out, because there's going to be plenty of text coming back at you here. So now I'm asking it, based on that test case that we've just been looking at, suggest improvements to widen the test scenarios and increase coverage. And then I've just pasted in that particular test case. And it's going off and saying, oh, right, well, perhaps you want to think about doing some data validation. You know, is that lead, we've gone and checked that the lead isn't created without duplicates. Is that really the end of the end-to-end process? Because surely that lead gets converted. Have we done enough duplicate checks? And so it's responding with some really good suggestions about how we might start expanding and broadening our test code coverage. And of course, we can prompt away and say, oh, well, I really like that suggestion for number 5, for example. Can you help me write a Copado robotic testing script for it? And it can start to suggest the actual script that you can then add into your regression suite. Now, it's important to note, it's never going to get everything perfectly right the first time. It's all about empowering you as a person to be more productive. And of course, we might say something like, we might want to hone in on a particular part here. So I'm going to ask it a follow-up question, suggest other test cases. So where we've just looked at that lead form coming in, you know, maybe I just want to expand on the test cases for that part. And it's coming back with suggestions around testing character limits or required fields or invalid date formats or all kinds of suggestions. And again, it can help us to then hone in on that section and build out our regression suite. And then you might come to a situation where you're thinking, well, hang on a minute, if I've got 700 regressions running, isn't that going to slow my release process down? So let's ask it. I'm concerned that having all these test cases will drastically increase the time it takes automated regressions to run. How does Copado help? And here we're moving into a much more natural conversation with the AI agent about concerns that we might have, or maybe we're just not trained enough on Copado robotic testing right now to understand how to achieve something. And the AI agent is able to tell us all of the ways in which CRT is going to help. And of course, with our new scale edition, you get 100 parallel robots at your service. So you can literally ask the script to be, or your regression test to be divided across that workload and carried out a lot faster. But there are also some really good other suggestions here. And we talked about perhaps you've already got your existing Selenium scripts and you're sick and tired of them breaking every time Salesforce does an update to the Lightning design system because all of those locators change. So you want to move to a system that's a lot more robust, like Robot Framework. So we'll just give it the script and we'll prompt it to say, hey, here's my JavaScript. What would this look like in Copado robotic testing? And also, I'm prompting it to say, look, please try to use those text-based locators wherever possible, because I don't want to be doing all of these technical locators anymore. And so now we've successfully completed that script. And we've got a suggestion. Again, you're going to need to cut and paste this in and run it through live testing and massage it to do exactly what it is that you want to do. But maybe you've just inherited a whole bunch of Selenium scripts and you're not really an automation engineer. And also, for a bit of fun, let's see if the AI agent can explain what that script actually does, like I'm a 5-year-old, and maybe it can make it funny. So let's see if it can come back with anything here. Yeah, I think my 5-year-old would understand that and probably quite enjoy that explanation. So, that's kind of AI helping out the dummies out there. But then maybe you're a seasoned test engineer, but you're just not proficient in Copado robotic testing. So you might ask something like this. Okay, I know that I want to use the API to create my accounts. I know that I should be able to do data-driven testing, and I should be able to load a CSV with those existing account information. So I want to achieve something relatively complex or advanced in terms of testing, but I'm not sure how Copado robotic testing will help you do that. And it's coming back here with a script that's going to get you started on that path. And of course, you can continue to interact with the AI agent to pull in further information or to improve certain aspects of that. Another really key thing to notice here is that it's actually pointing us back into relevant documentation as well. And I find that, as I said, I'm not a tester, so I don't really want to have to go and read through the brilliant but very extensive documentation that we have available on our website. The AI agent is actually going to tell us exactly, the relevant parts of that documentation. So we can ask questions in the context of the problems that we're facing. We get great answers back from AI, but we also get directed to further reading that will help to solidify those concepts. Okay. Now, there are going to be some very exciting announcements in Dreamforce next week around not only the test agent, but the other agents that Copado is bringing onto the table. So we have a plan agent, a build agent, test agent, as you're seeing here. We have operate agent and we have release agent coming, and they will be housed into AI workspaces. So as part of that process, you will now have access to all the power that you've been seeing here in terms of test agents and other AI capabilities. But the big news there is that you then control workspaces where you can upload your own documents and build out information and knowledge around your team that will then be used to provide further context to the responses that you're getting from AI. And it's done in such a secure way that we're not actually using any of that information to train our models. You control that documentation. You're basically augmenting these agents so that you could upload things like coding standard practices, PDF documents for your features that are being built. There's no no end to what you could do. You could be uploading maybe team scripts from team meetings up there, so that all of that information can be utilized by the AI. And when you're asking questions about particular features or particular team work that you're trying to get completed, you're going to get really good responses. And that's just going to be the start, I think, of the AI evolution that is coming. So hopefully you found that useful. I'm going to move over to the QA, and I'm going to just see whether we've got any questions in. If you've thought of anything, please go and post that in the Q&A. We have about 4 minutes, so we might be able to cover a couple of questions in that time. I can see a question in Q&A. Can this tool also help writing script for UI-based accessibility testing? That is a great question. I think what we might do there is once you could get access to things like those workspaces I was discussing, you would be able to upload perhaps those accessibility standards into there, and then when the AI is responding, hopefully it will be trying to adhere to those standards or providing some really great answers around how to test in those spheres. So I would say that it may have some basic knowledge of accessibility testing at this time, but with workspaces and the ability to kind of augment that knowledge base to the specific standards that you want to meet, it should be able to provide even better answers. And let's see if there are any other questions out there. Okay, so what strategy would we recommend for transitioning existing manual tests to automated tests? So hopefully you saw that today, that we could just literally provide the AI with those manual tests and ask it to start writing the CRT test scripts for us. Like I said, it's going to do a really good job, in my opinion, and from what I've been seeing, it's around kind of 85% done. So that's a real accelerator, because if you can get 85% of the way there in kind of a minute or less, then that last 15% becomes all of the kind of value add. So maybe you need to parameterize your test scripts, or you need to think about maybe expanding the breadth of those test cases as well. Sometimes users run manual tests with Explorer, and that's another way of getting quickly to some automated scripts. We saw that, and we saw, just providing the prompts. So maybe you take a blended strategy of kind of, those test cases that you're currently continuously running with manual tests. Let's get Explorer to help us gather that information. And for anything that's already documented, or very well documented, we can start using the AI for that. We have another question in: is the test agent able to answer questions such as, what is the test coverage for my Salesforce org? And what are the riskiest areas in the application that require more thorough testing? So that's a pretty specific question. I think at the moment, it's all about what the AI knows. And currently what you're seeing is the kind of the generalized Copado GPT model answering these questions. So that's been trained on all of the Copado information, all of our documentation, training videos, etc., etc. But it doesn't currently have information about your metadata in your org, for example. It doesn't, at this point in time, it's not going to understand the structure of your org or the features and applications that are available within your own tech stack. But I think you'll see that change over the next few months. The test agent announcement at Dreamforce will be the start of that. And obviously workspaces and the ability currently to upload documents and files up to that will, I suspect, expand over time so that we can start linking it to maybe your Git repository. Remember, there's a high level of security around here. You own that data that you provide to the AI to augment it. We don't have access to it. And we certainly don't use it to train our AI models. Hopefully that helps to answer that question. And I can see we're a minute over time. So I don't see any further questions in Q&A. I hope everybody enjoyed the presentation. As I said, a video will be coming your way with a recording of this. So I guess all that remains to say is, well, happy Friday. I hope you're all going to have a great weekend. And thanks for all watching. And we'll see you very soon. Thanks a lot.